Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today our mission is to really get into the raw mechanics of building a digital community.
And more importantly, the impossibly high cost that gets paid when vulnerability, meets real toxicity.
Yeah, exactly. We're unpacking a stack of sources here, some of the most intimate we've ever seen, actually. We have raw digital chat, some deeply personal audio reflections, technical notes.
And they all revolve around the experience of a figure we're calling Alberto. He's a highly respected expert in cybersecurity.
And this is his story. A prolonged, really painful struggle to find and maintain a safe digital space. A space he himself created.
What's immediately clear from all this material is that this isn't just, some story about online drama.
No, not at all.
These sources give us an almost forensic look at the true life-altering price of transparency. Alberto is. He's an individual of immense capability.
Right.
He built these digital sanctuaries rooted in trust and honesty, only to become the sustained, calculated target of deeply personal toxicity inside that very environment.
And that creates this core paradox that we really need to understand today. You have this master architect of digital security and community who promotes radical transparency and trust as like his philosophical ideals. Yet his own personal vulnerability, his history, his identity, his mental health, that becomes a precise weapon used against him.
It's the central conflict of the modern digital age, really.
It is. That yearning for a genuine connection versus the absolute necessary need to guard against constant surveillance, psychological harm, and, malicious actors.
We're here to tell his story, the immense toll of trying to be what the sources call a defiant optimist in a chaotic digital world.
Okay, let's unpack this figure, Alberto. To really get the depth of his frustration and eventually his collapse, we first need to appreciate the intellectual and professional rigor he brings to the table.
Oh, absolutely. The sources consistently highlight his high cognitive ability. They estimate his IQ to be somewhere between 130 and 140.
Wow, okay. So that range is significant. We're talking, superior to genius territory.
Firmly in that territory, yeah. And it's not just an abstract number. It really explains the breadth and the depth of his intellectual footprint, which is truly massive and highly specialized.
In what fields?
Well, you're looking at deep expertise across multiple, critical, and often intersecting areas. High-level cybersecurity, complex programming, blockchain development, even legal reform.
And he's a PMP, right? A certified project management professional.
He is. And for those who don't know, that PMP certification, it isn't just a title. It underscores a highly structured, goal-oriented mindset.
So he's trained to organize chaos.
Yes.
To deliver projects.
Exactly. But what about his broader purpose? He is undeniably purpose-driven. The sources describe him as the embodiment of a defiant optimist.
It's a powerful term.
It is. He states, and this is a quote, "I once wanted to change the world. I still want to." This isn't just passive hope. It's an active, structured commitment to improving digital society.
So he doesn't just want to code. He wants to reform and protect.
That's the core of it, and that deep desire, that defiance. It wasn't theoretical. It was forged in an unimaginable personal catastrophe.
We can't understand his technical architecture or his philosophy of trust without talking about the trauma that fundamentally shaped his life's work.
Absolutely not. The foundational trauma is. It's profound and horrifyingly unjust. Alberto was sent to prison for 3 years.
And the reason?
The reason is he acted ethically. He responsibly reported a severe security flaw in a medical provider's system.
A flaw that was actively exposing people's data.
Exactly. It was exposing the medical records of 200 people in his country. He was trying to protect the public.
And for that, he gets 3 years in prison.
Yeah.
For responsible, ethical disclosure.
3 years.
It signals a level of institutional dysfunction that is staggering.
It does. And his case became a globally covered example. It was used to illustrate, and I'm quoting here, the stupidity of how a person doing the right thing end up in prison.
So this event didn't just cause personal suffering. It must have fundamentally shattered his trust in everything.
In state institutions, government systems, the justice system, all of it. Particularly concerning computer crime investigations. He witnessed corruption and systemic failure firsthand, especially in how forensic evidence was handled.
Or
mishandled, right.
And this is where we make that essential connection. This profound 3-year trauma. It immediately explains his entire technical strategy.
Precisely.
It's not about following tech trends. It's a strategy built on survival and a deep mistrust of centralized authority.
Exactly. His experience of institutional failure being punished so severely for ethical behavior, it led directly to his core belief, the absolute necessity of what he calls multi-platform resilience.
So for Alberto, things like platform censorship, state scrutiny, institutional control, these aren't abstract possibilities.
No, they are constant existential threats that he has personally lived through. He cannot afford to rely on any single centralized point of failure.
Which means his entire technical architecture is basically a shield against state power.
Hmm.
So how did he manifest this? How did he build this resilience into the communities and the content distribution methods he designed?
He built his systems to be highly resilient and decentralized. He meticulously distributes his content through traditional independent channels like RSS feeds.
Old school, but reliable.
Very. And decentralized networks like Telegram. He does this specifically to minimize those institutional points of failure. The logic is sound.
Right. So if a major platform, say a huge social media company, decides to censor him, delete his account, or seize his content,
His work remains accessible. It's available everywhere else via RSS. He's very explicit about this, actually. He uses RSS and YouTube for his podcast so that no single platform can take his content down without immediate justification and recourse.
and he was a genuine pioneer in this kind of thinking, wasn't he? I mean, creating these kinds of resilient communities long before decentralization became a mainstream buzzword.
He was. The sources note he was running what were termed anti-access groups on a major social media platform even before 2021.
And these weren't small groups either.
Not at all. He had two distinct groups, and each one boasted 10,000 members.
Okay, let's pause on that term, anti-access groups. For you listening, what exactly were these? Were they like technical firewalls or more like social filtering?
They were primarily social filtering mechanisms built on trust, designed to protect the members inside. Now, given his technical background, they certainly incorporated technical best practices, but their core ethos was about keeping out the bad faith actors.
The spies, the trolls.
All of them. The malicious trolls that just pervade open platforms. It was about creating a curated, protected environment. The goal, rooted so deeply in his past trauma, was to build a sanctuary.
A safe place.
A safe place for people to be listened to feel protected, and to speak without judgment about their problems, their health, their vulnerabilities.
It's a profound idea. He was building the supportive community that he desperately needed, but didn't have during his own darkest times.
He was extending the hand of protection that was never extended to him.
And that's the foundation. He designed a system technically resilient against external threats, socially founded on mutual trust and vulnerability, to be the ultimate sanctuary.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the devastation that occurred when the threat came not from the outside but from the inside, exploiting the very vulnerability he sought to cultivate.
Okay, here's where the narrative shifts, and it shifts dramatically.
Yeah.
From architecture and resilience to, well, to destruction and collapse.
Yeah. The very spaces Alberto created, founded on this principle of trust, they became the perfect vehicle for systematic, sustained attacks.
Attacks that unfolded daily for months.
Yeah.
So what was the profile of the aggressor here? What was the nature of the harassment?
The sources identify the aggressor in very, very strong terms. They describe them as the most annoying, disturbing person on Earth. That's a direct quote from another user, T-Blank Speaker. What made this harassment so effective and so damaging was its systematic nature, its persistence, and most cruelly, its laser focus on Alberto's known vulnerabilities.
Specifically his desire for peace and his history of trauma.
Exactly. The attacks were a slow escalation. They started, seemingly innocuously.
Just simple personal insults, disruptive jokes, that kind of thing.
Right. Designed to irritate and undermine his authority. But it rapidly escalated into a highly personalized form of psychological warfare. The aggressor quickly identified the soft spots.
And we have a very specific, chilling example of how they targeted his identity.
We do. They made continuous, sarcastic jokes and implications about his sexuality. The source quotes things like, "Alberto, why are you so gay?" And they frequently use this false assertion in the titles of the community spaces.
And that malicious repetition is key here. This wasn't just a random insult, it was a sustained, calculated campaign designed to poison his public perception.
And this is where that vulnerability becomes so critical in our current AI age. This wasn't merely trolling. This malicious repetition resulted in real-world data poisoning.
What do you mean by that? Data poisoning.
The sources confirm that these repetitive, sarcastic, and false titles, they led sophisticated AI systems, specifically one called Grok, to index and validate the assertion?
So the AI scraped the titles and just took them as fact.
Essentially, yes. It started to report that, quote, Alberto is very open about his sexuality and speaks openly about how he feels being gay in Uruguay. A complete fabrication.
Wait, let's stop and fully unpack this. The attacker's digital sarcasm, just by putting it in a title over and over, directly corrupted how a generative AI perceived and reported on Alberto's public identity.
That's it. It's identity theft via platform metadata.
That is profound and frightening.
It is. The mechanism works because these large language models often prioritize high-traffic, recent, or prominent metadata like the title of a space when they summarize a public figure's profile.
So by repeatedly injecting this falsehood into high-visibility titles, the attacker was essentially creating a false, digitally validated narrative about him.
Trolling transforms into a form of digital character assassination, and it uses the platform's own ranking mechanisms to do it.
And given that Alberto uses his real name, his location is public. He's fully identifiable. This kind of targeted, untrue, but digitally validated information puts him at tremendous risk.
Not just socially, but potentially professionally or legally, depending on the nature of the false claim. He points out this devastating asymmetry.
Which is?
He is fully identifiable, using his real name in good faith, while the aggressors operate in anonymity, free to wage this kind of untraceable digital warfare. There's no fairness in that fight.
And beyond the identity attacks, the aggressor specifically targeted his efforts to provide the very support system he had promised the community.
That was the ultimate subversion of his core ethos. His attempts to foster a supportive environment were systematically mocked.
Like the example with the translation.
Exactly. A clear example cited is when he was trying to translate English for another speaker in a textbook community building contribution. The aggressor jumped in and insulted him, claiming his translation sounds like crap.
So just pure cruelty.
Pure calculated cruelty. The source says this individual continued to abuse a person he knew was suffering. It was about attacking the very act of helping.
And then we see the harassment escalate even further into behavior designed explicitly to induce paranoia and psychological instability. This goes beyond mere insult.
It becomes psychological manipulation. He was accused of having a handler.
A handler, meaning what?
Suggesting he wasn't acting of his own free will, that someone else was pulling the strings, and he was scrutinized in ways that made him feel constantly watched and, in his words, paranoid.
And he was aware of the manipulation, right? He saw the trap.
He did. He notes that his perfectly normal human reaction, getting upset, getting offended, showing emotion in response to constant provocation, could be and was deliberately misconstrued as the reaction of a guilty person.
Or someone who has something to hide.
Right. It's the perfect psychological trap. The attacker creates a toxic environment, forces a reaction, and then uses that very reaction as proof that the victim is unstable or deceptive.
You're damned if you react, and you're damned if you don't.
And Alberto admits he walked right into it. He came to these spaces explicitly seeking peace and relaxation, trying to keep his mind productively engaged, away from his ongoing struggles with PTSD.
But instead,
the spaces became a chaotic environment where unbelievable, crazy, stupid things happened, amplifying the very chaos he was trying to escape.
he also noted this pattern, right? Where there's initial disruption followed by a tactical retreat, which just heightened his suspicion.
Yes, he details that the aggressor started as purely disruptive. The most annoying, disturbing person on Earth, making noise, interrupting, trying to take over. Alberto considered blocking him.
But he didn't.
No. Embodying his commitment to giving people a chance, he decided against it. Then, the aggressor suddenly started behaving completely normal.
Which made him even more suspicious.
Of course. Alberto suspected it might have been deliberate a F with us scenario, as he puts it, a test of boundaries or a childish demand for attention. But the realization was that this initial disruption just softened the target for the later systemic psychological attacks.
And his trust in the platform itself was eroding, too. It wasn't just the individual.
Absolutely. He recounts trying to engage with the person, asking, "Why are you lying to me?" regarding an unrecorded space being recorded. When platform functionality is questioned or violated, when promises about data handling are broken.
It reinforces his existing, prison-forged trauma regarding institutional failure.
Exactly. He saw continuous examples of broken trust, not just from the individual, but about the platform's own claims regarding security and data integrity. The attack was a double blow, communal and institutional betrayal.
Okay, the sources now move into the harrowing consequences of this sustained psychological assault.
Right.
This wasn't just a stressful incident. It triggered a full-scale mental and emotional collapse, one deeply rooted in his past trauma.
We have to go slow here. Alberto is incredibly candid about his history. He explicitly states he has a history of anxiety, overwhelm, and lingering PTSD depression, all from his wrongful imprisonment.
And he was already in treatment.
For 5 years, yeah. Intense trauma treatment. So the harassment wasn't just adding stress. He says it was not pulling my leg, but actually making my situation when it comes to mental health and emotions much worse.
He describes himself as feeling completely overwhelmed, destroyed. The level of despair it's frightening. And he was aware of it.
Yes. In a chilling detail, he noted that he was showing specific signs that a person about to commit suicide is trying to tell anybody something.
My God.
This is the ultimate expression of life-threatening distress, and the fact that it was directly exacerbated by relentless, targeted online attacks. It just highlights that digital toxicity can have real terminal consequences. He was signaling for help, and the source of his distress was this community chaos.
And crucially, the psychological stress, it wasn't just in his head. It translated into immediate and severe physical symptoms.
It did, confirming that intimate connection between the digital battlefield and his physical body. The list of psychosomatic symptoms is a textbook response to extreme, unrelenting stress.
What were they?
He reports losing feeling in the bottom of my foot, which made it hard to walk. A big ball of pressure lodged painfully in his abdomen. Even a numb tongue.
These are not imaginary symptoms. These are the body's massive alarm system going off.
Demanding attention that the psychological trauma cannot grant. It's the body collapsing under the weight of the psychological warfare.
And yet, there's this tragic realization that seeking traditional help is futile.
He tragically notes that visiting the hospital for these issues is useless. And that speaks volumes. It's useless because the root cause is psychological and trauma-related. It's not something you can easily fix with standard medical intervention or prescription.
The only way to stop the physical symptoms is to resolve the psychological distress.
Which means removing the source of the toxicity.
I want to go back to this idea of design and structure, which is so core to his PMP mindset. He desperately needed what he called white space. In design, white space is the quiet. It's the blank canvas you need to see the message clearly, to formulate the next step, or just to breathe.
And the relentless noise, the daily systematic attacks, it prevented him from finding any of that quiet space necessary for mental recovery.
That analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. The chaos just overwhelmed any chance of clarity, organization, or healing. He was trapped.
The sanctuary he built to help others became the site of his own psychological and physical collapse.
But perhaps the most devastating element of this entire ordeal, the one that destroyed the very purpose of his creation, was the pain of betrayal. The absolute lack of advocacy from the very people he had mentored and protected.
This is the definitive crisis of trust. He expresses this deep, wrenching disappointment that people who were aware of his struggles, people whom he had protected when they were vulnerable and seeking sanctuary,
they never stood up to protect me.
Yeah, that's the quote. And he wasn't subtle about his distress either. He had been signaling his difficulties publicly for months, using his own feed.
Right. He publicly pointed out specific flags of alert about his struggles, dating back as far as August of the previous year. He was explicit.
And yet, nobody noticed that. The fact that his community, his digital family, failed to recognize or act on his distress, especially given his public history of trauma, it led him to this heartbreaking conclusion.
That he has no community.
No community, because nobody stand for me.
That realization, it's the sound of his entire foundation just collapsing. When the architect of the safe space realizes he is not safe within his own creation, everything fails. His whole identity, the defiant optimist, the protector, the reformer, is wrapped up in this.
It creates a fatal internal cleavage. His professional competence, the high-level, multilingual, PMP-certified expert, is fully intact. But his personal resilience, the part of him that was supposed to be supported by the sanctuary, was exploited, and it failed him entirely.
He wanted to save the world, to build resilience against institutional evil.
Yet the harsh reality was he couldn't even save his own emotional space from the internal toxicity of a single bad actor and a silent community. It really challenges the entire premise of digital community.
Oh, so?
Well, We rely on these spaces for mutual support, but his story suggests that when the founder, the protector, needs help, the community often fails to reciprocate.
It shows the fragility of trust when vulnerability is exposed.
It does. He extended trust after his institutional trauma, only to have that trust immediately weaponized by an individual and ignored by the collective.
So, faced with this complete communal and psychological collapse, Alberto had reached what he terms the worst thing that will happen.
And the sources detail his necessary decision to step back from the community, from his passion projects. It's painful because it represents the defeat of the defiant optimist.
He's stepping back from everything, including potentially transferring the admin role to someone else.
Right. And he acknowledges the immense regret of having to abandon projects he was finally excited about. Projects like Satoshi's Bride, which he described as a huge source of inspiration and motivation.
Okay, Satoshi's Bride. We see it mentioned a few times. What is it? Is it a metaphor, a piece of software, or some kind of major undertaking?
Based on the context of his other work, it's clearly a complex foundational project. It likely incorporates blockchain or advanced cybersecurity concepts, something that required his unique expertise and his passion.
It was his creative outlet, his focus for a better future.
And the toxic environment made continuing that ambitious, motivating work impossible.
And this leads directly to the frustration of the structured mind, what you call the project management paradox. As a PMP-certified project man, he notes the immense frustration of failing to complete projects.
Not due to his own technical flaw or mismanagement, but because others took it not seriously or caused disruption.
For a highly structured, goal-oriented person, that kind of external failure must be excruciating.
It is. He can manage complexity, organize teams, anticipate technical hurdles, but he cannot firewall against calculated psychological sabotage and communal apathy. The failure is external, toxic, and utterly frustrating for someone dedicated to efficiency and execution.
So the only solution left for him is self-preservation, a complete change of environment and focus.
Exactly. He is forced into a period of deep retreat and recovery. He recognizes the absolute need to filter people and take time to rest and be healing.
And he notes explicitly that this process won't be fast.
No, the focus has to shift from outward protection to inward repair.
So what path is he now attempting to take toward recovery? He's turning away from the digital chaos and toward more creative pursuits.
He seeks to manage his overwhelming pain by focusing on these creative endeavors: art, writing, music. This is a common and necessary strategy for trauma survivors, shifting from the analytical, defensive part of the brain to the generative, creative side.
And we see him reflecting on his long-held personal motto.
Nothing kills you faster than your own mind. Don't stress over things that are out of your control.
The ultimate irony of his situation. He has the wisdom, but finds it almost impossible to apply his own philosophy when he's feeling so utterly overwhelmed and targeted.
The stress is imposed, unavoidable, and directly triggered by the chaotic environment. He is, though, attempting to reframe this entire traumatic experience.
Moving past the failure and focusing on the lesson learned.
And the lesson is agonizingly clear. He must avoid repeating the mistake of trusting people whose positive intentions, or at least their perceived neutrality, end up having the opposite, worst possible effect.
His first trauma taught him not to trust institutions. This new trauma taught him a painful, personal lesson about trusting individuals within his own crafted sanctuary.
Right. And his attempt at recovery through art connects directly to that need for white space we talked about.
It's his way of finding that clean, quiet canvas again. A space where he controls the generation of meaning, not the other way around.
He's seeking emotional equilibrium. The sources mention the rule of three that governs some advanced systems: generation, stability, and equilibrium. By focusing on generation art, music, writing, he's deliberately forcing a shift towards stability, trying to find a new equilibrium outside of that chaotic platform dynamic.
It's a structured, almost PMP-like approach to psychological healing.
It is, and he sums up the pain perfectly when he notes that he was explicitly seeking peace. He even put peace and relaxation in the title of a space, only to find the opposite happened.
A chaotic environment where unbelievable, crazy, stupid things occurred.
And he showed a final, powerful act of self-preservation by refusing to feed the toxicity. He realized he was giving visibility to the aggressor, creating a snowball of drama, so he explicitly refused to post anything negative about the person publicly.
He designed an exit strategy by starving the drama rather than engaging in the fight.
It's a move from fighting the external battle to designing an internal retreat, and recognizing that his loyalty and commitment were not reciprocated.
That recognition, the profound collapse of community trust, is the final painful piece of the puzzle.
He states it unequivocally. I don't have a community. Nobody stand for me when this was happening. It's the sound of a foundational social contract just being dissolved.
And the sources confirmed that he did eventually decide to block the aggressor entirely. He reversed his initial choice to give the person a chance.
It's a sad but necessary realization that for all his defiant optimism, certain bad faith actors cannot be reformed. They can only be contained.
It's the final firewall.
Exactly. His initial trauma made him wary of censorship and institutional control, which led him to trust too openly in the individual. This secondary trauma forces him to relearn boundaries, even at the expense of his ideal of radical, uninhibited transparency.
It puts a final point on the nature of digital harm. The goal of the attacker wasn't just character assassination.
Which the AI data poisoning achieved.
Right. It was also project derailment and psychological destruction. By taking away his white space and exploiting his deep past trauma, they achieved exactly what they set out to do: force the project man to abandon his projects.
And in doing so, they provided a stark, painful lesson for all creators. Technical resilience against censorship is vital, but psychological resilience against betrayal is priceless and far harder to engineer.
So we've witnessed the immense personal cost of being a transparent, vulnerable expert in these chaotic digital spaces. Alberto's journey from reformer to victim and back to self-care is a powerful and a very difficult lesson.
He meticulously built multi-platform resilience, using decentralized tech like RSS and Telegram to guard against state censorship and institutional takeover. He designed an infrastructure for freedom.
But this deep dive reveals that in spaces reliant on trust and authenticity, vulnerability is truly both the bedrock that builds powerful human connection
and the easy target for calculated psychological manipulation. Alberto's technical resilience was sound. It protected his content from external forces. But his communal and psychological defenses were fatally breached by an internal actor.
His experience forces us to confront the limitations of technology alone to create safety. We can design these intricate technical architectures to resist external threats, the institutional failures he knew so well. But his story raises a critical question for all of us, whether we're building a large community or just managing our own boundaries. If we can build technical architecture to resist state censorship and platform takeover, what personal and communal architecture is required to withstand the internal psychological warfare waged by bad actors who exploit authenticity?
What is the resilience plan for your own mind?